Hello and welcome to another Hexarchy video. Hexarchy recently enjoyed a big public playtest, so I finally got some more multiplayer experience. And I thought it would be fun to rank all the cards in the game in various tier lists based on their multiplayer viability. I'm gonna start with civilizations, then we'll have a look at all the things you can do in a city, then all the things you can do on the map, and then on technologies and civics. Please know that I'm basing this on the current version of the alpha build, that's 0.568. And there's still a lot of content missing from what we can expect to be in the release build. Also, I personally like to play a fast-paced style, with settling wide, many smaller cities, and then aggressively burning cards, so that will definitely impact the ratings I give out. From the tiers themselves, S tier means cards you will actively take up to, even if it costs you hammers. They're just that impactful. You almost not want to burn them before you use them at least once. Whereas an F tier card is simply burn on sight. There might be some edge cases for them, but Hexarchy Timer is ruthless, so save yourself some brain power and just burn them. So let's get started with Civ abilities. I have them separately from other abilities because you always have them in your opening hand, and that's a big deal. You want to have them impact on turn 1. And first up is Breakthrough, which is the unique ability of Greece, and it gives you 1 to 2 science. And the more I play with this, the more I think it's just a very good ability. You know, at worst on turn 1 you get like 2 gold from it, so 1 hammer for 2 gold. That's like not great, but it's at least decent, gives you something. And science is just a very good resource because it allows you to take up quickly with saving you hammers, which is the most important thing you can have. And also in a long game, science will definitely have a high price. People like to buy science on the market, so every turn the price of science goes up, and this can definitely make you over 10 gold in a turn on later turns if you get a 2 science. That's like the only downside it has, and all the other similar abilities. If you get 1 science, it just doesn't feel that great. You know, if you high roll 2 science on turn 1, you just feel like you have a good time. Next up we have Gift of the Nile, which is the unique ability of Egypt. Similarly to Greece, where it gives you food instead of science, and it also increases the tile yield of whatever you use it on. Usually you want to use it on your capital tile, you know, that's just like a safe bet. There's always like at least 1 more food you can put on there because the cap you can get from Gift of the Nile is 4 food. And it's just a bit weaker than Breakthrough though, because you get food, which is good. Sometimes it can allow you to get your settler on turn 1 because of this. You know, you settle on like a 2 food tile, and this gives you the 3rd food, so you can immediately get to 2 population and use it to build a settler. So that is nice. Also the increased yield is nice, but food has a fixed price, you know, at 2. It's a bit more, like you get a bit more bang for your buck than Breakthrough if you just look at it, like how much stuff you get, but science just has more impact. So, but definitely this is like a very, very high B tier ability. Next up we have Great Work, which is the unique ability of France, and this is just straight up trash. The problem with this ability is it doesn't give you any bonus for your first turn. You know, it gives you culture, it gives you happiness, so it might give you like 1 or 2 victory points. It might help you push your borders on turn 1, but that's just not something you want to be doing on turn 1. You want to be getting resources, you want to be ideal building a settler and like an improvement. This doesn't help with any of that. So this would be way better as like a later thing you unlock after some civics or whatever, then could actually have some impact. And even then it would be pretty weak. So yeah, just terrible. Sorry, France. Next up we have the unique ability of England, Import, and it's just a bit weaker than Gift of the Nile. It also gives you 1 to 2 resources that you don't currently have. On top of that, it also gives you 1 gold. So this can be very useful, but the randomness is just not that great. But you know, you can just sell the resources on turn 1, they will all cost 2. So you have like 1 hammer for 5 gold, ideally, or maybe just 3. That's just a good deal to use on turn 1. So there's nothing wrong with that. It just, I don't really like the randomness of it, even though sometimes you just high roll whatever you want and then you just feel great. Next up is Infrastructure, which is the Rome unique ability. This basically, when you use it, a random building or improvement in your hand will cost 1 gold. Know that it's only like one use thing. If you use it on like the last card in your hand, like a granary, and then you draw it again, it will cost hammers again. So it's just one use thing. This is just a bit weaker than the other economic abilities, because sometimes you can use it on turn 1. You want to build like a mine, so this will save you 2 hammers, like turn 1 hammer to gold, so that's a bit comparable in that case. And well, actually will only save you 1, because you have to use the ability and then the cost. So instead of 3 hammers, it will cost 1 hammer and 1 gold. It scales the later you go in the game, because the buildings get more expensive. So like on barracks, which costs 5 hammers, now it just costs 1 gold. So that's good, but the return is just not there compared to the other two. This one will just make you 1 resource on turn 1. So sometimes you will keep it, sometimes you just want to burn it and move on with your life. Next up is China and organized labor, and this is just a straight up S tier. No doubt about that. It draws you 3 cards, which heavily stabilizes your early game. You want to get through your deck as fast as possible usually to get to your settler, because that's just what you want to be doing on turn 1. Getting out a settler, maybe fishing if you need to forage for food to get your first settler out. If there's not like a food on market or a 3-food tile, you can settle on turn 1. And this does all of that, and it scales with it doesn't scale, but it just, the value is always there, drawing 3 cards and getting 1 gold. It's basically like having some gold, unless you draw precisely to what you want to, and that's just great. So even if you start like the perfect opening hand, you can just use organized labor and you will find something you can burn to get the value back. So this ability is just amazing all around, every point in the game. You only will burn it at the end game, where you like your deck, you can draw it all in 1 turn, and even then you might keep it if you want to replay some cards. So it is just amazing. So from the best safe ability to the worst one, well, it's a bit debatable. It's probably a bit better than the French one, but resiliency for Russia. Well, the problem with this one is it does exactly what it says. It will fill up your food to half, and this is just not very useful on turn 1, because you will probably settle on a tile with food. So this just doesn't do anything, because you already have some food. Because when you settle your capital, you immediately get the resources that you settled on, which is not the case for the later cities. Which basically means resiliency only does something if you settle on a known food tile, and those are just not very good to settle on, unless there's like a hut. And you can settle on like a hill hut with 1 hammer, you use resiliency. That could be something in there, but it just almost never comes up. And then later in the game, this doesn't do anything. Like, this is basically like, where's granary? I think it would be better if it just gave you like food for the level of the city. Like 1 pop city will get 1 food, 2 pop city would get 2 food. Then you could at least use it on turn 1 to, like, if you settle on a 2-food tile, similarly to Gift of the Nile, you get the last food you need to get your pop. And it wouldn't be that much stronger, but at least this would have some usage, So yeah. Next up we have Sacrifice, which is the unique ability for Aztecs. This one is interesting. I personally don't like to play this kind of playstyle with like a lot of cities and monuments, where you want to keep your population low and turn it into gold to farm more stuff. But I can see the value in that. You get 4 to 8 gold. That's a decent value. I mean, it costs you 1 hammer. It also means you won't get that much unhappiness, which is a big deal. And the culture might be good as well. This will give you some victory points over the course of the game. But again, it doesn't do anything on turn 1. You won't have enough food to use this. I mean, there are some edge cases where it can work, but it's just like, what are you gonna do with the gold then? Like, your bottleneck on turn 1 is usually hammers. So I will put it in C tier, just like unwillingly. I see some potential there. Just not a card I like to play, but definitely better than the other 2 in F tier. So C tier it is. Next up we have Satrap for Persia. Now this is the highest skill cap ability, I would say, from all of these, because you can do some pretty cool stuff with it. It allows you to scout over like mountains and hills that you cannot see through, so you can move your first unit further away. It can claim you like holy site, it can claim you important resources. It also just gives you victory points. Every 2 times you use this, you get a victory point, so that's nice. You can get to those holy sites on islands that sometimes spawn, in like those one-tile islands that nobody can get to. Sometimes your setup can get to, and that's a big victory point boost. Also, you can like claim a tile over a mountain and build a barracks there, and now you have like a forward base that you can conquer your opponents with. So yeah, I really like the gameplay that Satrap gives you. There's a lot of potential to have some cool outplays. But in the end, it doesn't give you like any resources or anything. It allows you to claim like a holy site, so you can start pushing your borders earlier. So it's not a good turn 1 ability in multiplayer. In daily challenges, it's great, but that's preset. So that doesn't really apply here. But it has good stuff late game. So I think it's like a low B tier, but it's very fun to use. And last up we have Trade Hub. This is the unique ability of Arabia. It's a bit like a worse version of Import, because it puts like 3 to 5 resources on the market, and it reduces the overhead cost for trading. So if you like over hills from someone, and this can allow you to buy a lot of stuff more cheaply. But again, it doesn't really help you in the early game because you don't have the money to buy them. Sometimes it's useful if you don't have enough food to get your first population. You can try to use Trade Hub and hope there's going to be food there. In that case, it can really help you with stabilizing your turn 1, because it's like the most important thing to do. But just like it's too random for my liking. It does something, but not too much. So I think C tier for that. Is it? Would I make any changes within the tiers? I guess Sacrifice I would put below Trade Hub. And the only one I'm not unsure about is Infrastructure. It's like either a very high C tier or a very low B tier. Because it gives you it can give resources on turn 1. There are even some potential like 2 improvement plays where you can go. So maybe it's more like a very low B tier, where like if you have any of these 6 civilizations, you're kind of like, okay, I get something to do on turn 1, and then the other one on the bottom, you are just sad that you got them. Probably need some buffs, especially the bottom 2. They don't work as civ abilities when you start with them in your hand. That's not what they do. Okay, so next up we have everything you can do in a city. That means units, buildings, and wonders. The reason I have them all together is because they compete for your city builds, which is a very limited resource. So even though they work a bit differently, they all have to be evaluated compared to the other ones, I believe. And first up we have Archer. Used to be pretty good when it was still like a melee unit with just like a little bit different mechanics. But now that it's a range unit, it's just straight up F tier. Like you want your units to capture cities, defend cities, hunt settlers, plunder tiles, occupy tiles. Archers cannot capture cities. Even if you give them charge and they move next to an empty city, they will just not move into that city. And that's terrible. Their stats are terrible. They have 3 power. They get outskilled by any other tech unit. They can only defeat settlers. It might feel good to snipe like a settler long range with your archer. And that's cool if that gamble pays out, where you build an archer and the opponent builds a settler. But if it doesn't work out, if you don't meet a settler, it's terrible. Plus, it only harms one player when you snipe their settlers, whereas every other player is fine. So you have to think about Hexarchy as a race, and you're racing to 100 points, and Archer doesn't do anything to help you with that. It helps to slow other people down, but you only slow one person down with an Archer. There's more people in the game. Also, it doesn't have any alternative cost. So it's actually very expensive, 3 hammers for such a battle unit is just a terrible deal. Next up we have X-Men. Definitely better than Archer, but the more I play, the less I believe in the X-Men. I think it's like a C tier unit. See, the problem with X-Men is it gets out-teched pretty easily by a Swordsman, which is an amazing unit. X-Men costs stone, which is nice, but stone is a reasonably important resource. You want to use it to build wonders on the cheap, not X-Men. So it's like a good emergency unit where you really need someone. You can just really quickly take into it through masonry and get an X-Men, but it will just never conquer anything. By the time you reach someone with an X-Men, they will have their own X-Men, and then they have the bonus from defending a city. So it just never does exactly what you want it to do, and that's a bit of a shame. Up next we have our first building, which is Barracks. Barracks is a very good building. I would say one of the best buildings, actually. The thing it allows you to do is have an extra build. So in that case, it's a bit like a warehouse. But you can put it further away from your city, so you are closer to the front line. Also, when you build a unit on the barracks, it will go to the top of your draw pile, and you can draw it again and play it again. There's a bit of a exploit right now with conscription abilities, so they both cost 1 gold, which apparently it's a bug. I thought it was like a cool combo. It makes the barracks even stronger than it already is, so maybe it's better if you treat it as a bug. But the thing with barracks is, it shortens the distance your units have to take to engage in fight, which is like one of the most important things, movement. So in that case, it just does what you want it to do. It's not that expensive, for how much value it gives you. I mean, you don't really want to build more than like 1 or 2 of them in a match. Probably 1. I don't think I have built 2 in a long time. And you can just keep rotating units on it. And yeah, it's just a very good building. Be a little bit careful about where exactly you build it. Sometimes you want to be a bit more smart about it. Like, obviously you want to build it like 3 tiles away from the enemy city, so you can just mobilize your unit and march it in there. But sometimes that's more than 1 tile, and if you build it like on the straight way from the opponent, you might be able to build it, and if you don't have a unit to put in there immediately, your enemy might accidentally march into your barracks, then on the next turn claim your barracks, and now you're on like a really bad spot. It happened to me. It wasn't pretty. I lost that game. So yeah, it takes a little bit of brain power to put it where you want it, but it will pay you off. Next up we have our first siege unit, which is the cannon. And as a siege unit, it's just bad. It's very high tech, very expensive, doesn't deal that much damage, it cannot capture cities, can be captured, it's very slow. It just like, these, I mean, I can just put catapult there as well because it's the same thing. It just kind of even like more expensive in a way and just way weaker. Like the only good thing about the siege units is that they don't cost you population, but they give you points for being a military unit. So if you have like a lot of production, you can spam them to get like an extra point. But that doesn't really apply to the catapult because you get it quite early and you want to burn it. But maybe with a cannon you can scrounge some points there, but there's probably going to be better ways to do that than with building a unit that's just bad. You just don't have time to set it up. Even like on defense, just put like a better melee unit in your city, not a cannon. There's no point in that. You're just wasting your resources. Then we have our first wonder building, which is Kikenitsa. This one lowers the consumption of food in all your cities. It comes from mathematics, which is not a very good technology because there's like nothing following it, and the things you get from there is just nothing, and then Kikenitsa. So that's probably why I think it's like the worst wonder probably in the game, maybe like second worst. But even a bad wonder is still a wonder, It can't go lower than C tier because it gives you victory points. The thing with lowering the food consumption in your cities, I think it basically like halves it. So if you have like a 4 population city, it usually consumes 4 food. Now it's gonna cost 2 food per turn with Kikenica. The thing with food consumption is it's not all bad, because if your cities grow much faster, then they will have more unhappiness, and that's a way worse thing than having lower population in the long run. Like in the end game, yes, a lower population can give you some extra points, lower food consumption by population, I mean, because your cities will grow faster, you get more points from that. But in the early game, it can be a bit of a trap to go for this wonder, so definitely don't prioritize it at all. But, if it's still open and you got the resources, build it, you get 5 points. By resources, I mean, if you have the stone, probably, like, it is very expensive. It only gives you 5 points, which is the same as, like, the early game wonders. It's, like, in this weird spot where it doesn't give you 7, but it costs, like, it should be, like, 6. So it's just a bit sad, this building, this wonder. But, I mean, not everything can be a winner. Like Colosseum, which is also not a winner. Colosseum is just bad. It doesn't really help your economy that much. It gives you some happiness, but at a very steep cost. You'd rather be building monuments if you want to give some happiness. All these buildings that have more benefit the more workers build your city hex is just not good in multiplayer. You don't have the time to build like a very tall city. It just doesn't give you enough benefits to justify building like a Colosseum. So yeah, it's a bad type of building, and it doesn't, even in a bad type of building, it's bad. So don't build a Colosseum. Next up we have a courthouse. Pretty much the same case. It is very expensive if you don't build it with the hammer and the marble. And even then, that's like 2 rare resources for a building that just like lowers your maintenance costs. You can build a road and it will lower your maintenance cost. And it will allow your units to be faster, walking to the front line. So why would you build a courthouse? Another thing is, it's I believe it comes from philosophy, which is just a very bad technology card. I mean, partially because it leads to courthouse, but it also leads to other bad cards, So you probably don't want to even see courthouse because you will burn philosophy. So just bad. Next up we have crossbowman. I mean, it's the same case as the archer. It's just a bit stronger, and again it lacks an alternative cost. In this case it is very noticeable. It costs 6, and there's no way to decrease that. Maybe there should be some way to get these range units some alternative cost. Maybe you could use firewood for that. I don't know. We need like another strategic resource, but it's just like it cannot one shot like a swordsman. You can one shot a spearman in the field, but you never see spearmen. It just like the cases where this unit would be good are like, maybe you have a city exactly 2 tiles away from an opponent's city, so you can just like shoot them with your crossbowman. But they will just move out, they will mobilize and go. Well, actually, if it's only 1 tile, they can mobilize and attack. So you won't even get like the first hit because you are attacking and they're not. It will depend on the turn order. So you won't even get the first hit, and like good luck defending anything with a crossbowman in melee. It's like it's just like weak unit, and it's a range unit, So all bad. Next up we have a forge, which is in the same class as the Colosseums. It's a building that scales with the more pop works as city tile, and that's just not good. It's expensive. It gives you the hammers back, but all buildings have the problem that they only give you the benefit the next turn, except I guess granary. Whereas improvements on the map give you immediately the rare resources that they work, So in that way, buildings are like, they cost you a city build, and they don't really have an immediate impact. So that's why on average buildings are like, a lot of them are just very bad, and Fort is one of them. A building that is a bit better than that is a fort. Still not great. I personally don't build them very often, but there are some like map layouts where a fort can be very good if you have like a choke point and you don't necessarily want to, or not necessarily, you don't have the option to build a city there because, or the borders are full and it's with the enemy and you don't have a space to put a city there to defend it. You can put a fort there and put a unit there and you will be able to defend your city quite well. If it's like an open map, forts don't have that much utility. You want to be always defending your city by unit in the city, just so you don't get outmaneuvered in a way. And I mean, fort, you would have to cover like a lot of grounds to make people not able to go to your city. So yeah, it's a situational building, but it at least has some uses. A building that I think many will believe I am undervaluing is the granary. I just don't think granary is that good. I think it's like a C tier unit, C tier building. The thing with granary is you don't really need it. Like what I mean by that is it allows you to grow your city faster by saving the food. Because when you build it, you immediately get one population, and then every time the city increases the population, it retains half the food it needed for the previous level. So it will give you, plus it gives you one food production every turn. So that's there as well. So it will give you like a lot of food on your city. But do you really need like a lot of food on one city? It's like it gets more and more expensive to improve the population of your cities. And it can only happen one per turn, so you probably want to have your main city always building units that will be decreasing its population. So you won't even like need the granary to always like over the end turn get an extra population. And if you're not doing that, then granary just doesn't give you that much benefit. When you consider that, it takes the city build. You always have to value these on the fact that these take a city build. Granary doesn't help with that. Next up we have the Great Lighthouse. Well, actually now I realize that both barracks and fort are not actually built in the city. They are built on the map. So they should be in the next tier list. And honestly, they should be renamed. They shouldn't be buildings. They should be improvements to be consistent. So I'll put them out and we'll don't get confused, and we'll put them there in the next one. The Great Lighthouse. This is like a decent wonder, and a decent wonder is a very good thing to build because you get points. In the case of the lighthouse, you also get money, quite a bit. So that's good. The downside is you have to be on the coast, which you don't always want to be settling on. Also, people kind of like it when they build on the coast, so you might not be able to get to it fast. But I don't think you really need to prioritize the lighthouse. If you have the spare city build and the spare resources, go for it. Points are good. It's what the game is about, but not much to write home about it actually. We have another wonder. We have the Great Wall coming up, and this is kind of in the same tier as Chichen Itza. We have the problem that it gives you 7 points instead of 5. It is more expensive, but the benefit is not that great. Lowering enemies' movement points. It doesn't really help you win. That's like the kind of thing where it makes the other people harder to conquer you, but it doesn't help you conquer them. So that's not really what you want from a wonder. It's probably worse than Chichen Itza. Chichen Itza, I guess, is the proper way to pronounce it. I don't know. I'm pronouncing it weirdly. And also it faces a tough competition from Notre Dame, which comes after it. Usually people want to take to Notre Dame, and then Great Wall is left behind to grab for later. And yet another wonder in the row is Hanging Gardens. Hanging Gardens, I think, just like I was surprising people with Granary, I think I'm gonna surprise them with Hanging Gardens. It's just not that great to grow your population in the early game, It's a very popular wonder, so people will grab it. And I don't think it's really helping them win that much because, again, growing faster is not actually that important. Like, you are able to get your one growth per turn when you're like on 1 or 2 population quite consistently. So Hanging Gardens only really does something when you go to like 3 or 4 population cities. And that's gonna become later in the game, With Hanging Gardens might come sooner. And then you're gonna have a problem with happiness again. Happiness is a big deal, it costs a lot of money and a lot of everything. So, don't be too high on Hanging Gardens. It's a bit of a treacherous thing, just like Ichenica. Next building we have is the Harbor. I think Harbor I underplayed a little bit. It's quite cheap, only 2 hammers. It gives you 1 gold per turn, and then it gets you some extra merchant resources on the market, and it can also lower the cost of trade if trading by water is what the game does for you. So I think it's like a very low B tier building. It can give you some money, it can give you the resources you want. It can save you money on trade, which sometimes can be a big deal depending on the map layout. But mostly just because it's pretty cheap and it doesn't do that much, but it does at least something. Another unit that I think everybody, not just me, is not playing enough of is the Horseman. The Horseman is our first cavalry unit. Cavalry unit, they have 6 movement, but they get stopped dead in their tracks by hills. So even with their 6 movement, they can only move into the hill. They can even like hill and a flat tile, just 1 hill and they're done. So you really want to have either roads with them or give them the woodsman promotion. The reason I think Horseman is like a B tier unit is it starts mobilized as cavalry units do, so you can immediately use it for defending. It's very good, I think, on defending, especially because of this. You can just move them in your city, make sure nobody can get there in time. But also, it can really surprise people when it's like if there's not like any obstructions between you and the enemy, you can just build a horseman, give it charge, and then like surprisingly from very far away, get into their city. You cannot capture the city, but you can pillage it, which can give you a lot of gold if it's a big city, or just it gives you the 2 plunder points and some gold if it's a small city. Also, it lowers the upkeep for the horseman, so you just for free. The one problem I see with the horseman is the stats. It's only got 12 power, so it cannot stand up to a swordsman or a spearman. But it's pretty cheap. If you think about the fact that it costs a horse, that's the cost for mobilize. It comes mobilized, so it basically only costs 2 hammers. So how much better than a warrior is the horseman. I think the longer we will play on like high level multiplayer games, the more people will see that horseman is actually pretty good. And next we have another pretty good building, I think, is the jeweler. The reason it's good is it gives you like jewels, which is like a special type of resource that you cannot see anywhere else on the map. You can only get it from this building, which means you'll get 2 pieces of it over the end turn. So this basically gives you 5 gold per turn guaranteed. And at that point, if you have some marble laying around, if you have some iron, because you want to have iron stockpile for the military units, building a jeweler is not that bad. Like the first jeweler, because you get two of the resource, so it gives you 5 gold. is pretty good. I mean, I wouldn't build the second jeweler because at that point you will only get probably one jewel from it. So now you only get three gold, and that's just not worth it. But 5 gold per turn, I'm in for that. That's a very nice resource building, at some points. Then we have the knight. Basically similar to the horseman, it's just stronger, bit more late game because you have to go through feudalism, which is a very expensive tech. But it can brawl with swordsmen. Basically everything I said for the horseman counts for the knight. It's just a bit more expensive because it needs an iron and an extra hammer. But you will have iron because you need iron for swordsman. So it's just like a natural progression. And it's still not like that far away that you will not see it. And like in a regular game, you will take up to knight. It will be like maybe the last unit you build, but you might build more of them and run around, reinforce your cities or use them to capture people's cities. No, knights are good. And I should probably order them within the tiers as well. I mean, in the F tier doesn't matter. That's just all bad. In the C tier, I mean, this gives more points, so it's probably a bit better. And I think it's just a wonder, gives you points better than the X-Men. Up in the B tier, I think Harbor is like the lowest in there. I think the Knight I built it more than the Horseman, but maybe just the way I play is not that great. So yeah, probably like it, and I'm going forward. I'll be trying to order them within the tiers as well. Like with the library, which I think is a bit better than the granary. Like I personally think I don't build enough libraries because they come from writing. It's like the only thing you can do immediately after you research writing. And I don't usually have the stone for it. But science production, it's not that bad. I mean, it's not great. It's like pretty low C tier. It's a very situational building, but maybe the one's culture, if you put it in like a minor city, can also add up to like 2 points over the course of the game. So, not great, but I should probably sometimes dabble in some more libraries than I do. Then we have the Musket Man. Oh, the Musket Man. Sometimes I don't even make it to Musket Man when the game ends. But if I do, I think it's probably somewhere around the night. Maybe like, let's put them between them. I think these three are all comparable. I think they are like different tier units, like you have the Horseman, then you have the Knight, then Musket Man is like the top tier unit, so not technologically. So they're a bit harder to compare, but Musket Man, if you put it in your city, you just know that nobody will be able to conquer it. It is very expensive, but at that point in the game, you will have the resources for it. It's like the ultimate defensive unit, If you put it down, this city is gonna hold, and you're sure how many points you will have on the next turn. And of course, if you can get it to attack, then you are doing pretty well for yourself. Next up we have Notre Dame, just like straight up the best wonder in the game. And I'll tell you why. It gives you 2 happiness on all your cities. This means you won't have to care about unhappiness at all if you play with like smaller cities. This is why like Hanging Gardens and Chichenice are not that great, It means your cities will grow. And then if you have Notre Dame, that's fine, Now you will be like stable with your happiness. But if you have small cities and you build a Notre Dame, then every turn you have this chance that you will get We Love You points, and those points add up. It's also not that expensive, researching to it is expensive, because you have to go. I think it's gunpowder, the one after construction. So getting there, and you want to rush it because people know this is a good wonder. They will try to get it sooner. Like, you will very rarely see someone getting Great Wall before Notre Dame, even though Notre Dame is immediately following Great Wall technologically. 2 hammers, 2 stone, 2 marble, not that expensive, and the benefits are huge. This is like the wonder to get. If you can get a wonder in a game, get the Notre Dame. Then we have the pyramids. Pyramids are 1 gold more expensive than the other tier 1 wonders. They don't give you any economic benefits, but I think the fact that they helps you expand your borders makes it just like a bit better than the Great Lighthouse. You put it in your second city, and now it will grow every turn. Your main city will now also grow every turn. You want to spread out your wonders, so the culture they give you is always benefiting you. Means you have to defend them more, all your outlier cities, but that's not that hard to do. So in the sense that pyramids will give you the most points out of these wonders, I think makes it better than the Great Lighthouse. Yeah, but sometimes the gold from the Great Lighthouse might be worth it. Then we have the Scout. The Scout, I don't really like this. Like, if you have to build a Scout on your first turn, something went wrong. But that being said, probably still better than the X-Men. Like, you want to build your Scout because you couldn't build your Settler. That's basically it. Like, on the first turn, you want to build a unit. And if you can't build a Settler because it's on the bottom of your starting deck, because you somehow cannot get the food for it, you might want to build a Scout because it can claim goodie huts. It can scout, which can be good for your next cities and see where the enemies are. It can claim resources, which can be quite good. It can also prevent others from getting resources. If you park it in between the opponent's supply route on like a very good upgraded tile, it can be a bit annoying. But there we're coming to the fact that it's a multiplayer game, it's not a 1v1 game, so that's not really the best use for your Scout, even though it's very annoying. So, this is like a backup unit. And, if you build a Scout, something went wrong, but at least something I can do. And of course, you just don't build more Scouts than one. That's not what this game is about. Because this game is about Settlers. I mean, Settlers gotta be the absolute top tier unit. You can't win a multiplayer game without building Settlers. It's not how the points work. You would basically just have to conquer everything, and yeah, it's a good achievement if you do that, but it will not help you out. I mean, this is like by far the thing you want to build on turn 1 the most, and then every turn you might want to be building more, maybe not on turn 2, but definitely on turn 3 the latest. You want to have like 5-6 cities by the time the game ends. I mean, your own cities, plus some more you want to conquer. The fact that it has the same movement as the Scout, and just like a barely worse vision, is also great, it has better view, it has better line of sight than the military units. So it's kind of like doing the scouting for you in that way, making the Scout a bit obsolete. It can also claim goodie huts. You can just move there and then settle on it. Sometimes the huts are on bad spots, but sometimes it's an absolutely viable way to do it. So yeah, I don't even know why I'm talking too much about the settlement. Just obviously great. What's obviously not great is the Spearman. I mean, the fact that it's right next to the Swordsman, like even here, the names are next to each other. It's on the same, when you develop metalworking, they're also like right next to each other. It's just like, why would you build a Spearman when you can build a Swordsman? Just like in a vacuum, it can be quite good, especially if people build more cavalry units, which they don't do, but maybe they will at some point. But it just like straight up loses in a fight with a Swordsman. So, just burn the Spearman when you do the metalworking and instead build a Swordsman. Swordsmen are really, really good. This is like your bread and butter unit. It's very cheap, It only costs 1 iron, and this is why iron is very important. If you can buy it on the market, great. If you can build a mine for iron, great. Swordsman is the reason why X-Men isn't very good. And 15 power for one resource is very nice. It's not that hard to take up to, you just go through masonry, metalworking. It's just like your bread and butter unit. It's like there are matches where I just build swordsman, You don't need anything else. It does exactly what you want it to do. Maybe, just build swordsman and you're gonna be fine. Then we have the last wonder, Temple of Diana, which is a very interesting wonder in the sense that it's the wonder you don't want to build in your capital because it doesn't give you the benefit of removing the maintenance. Like ideally you want to build this on like the furthest away city you build over like deserts and hills and whatever, where you don't have to pay like 12 gold per turn, but you just don't have to pay anything. But the problem is that somebody might have built it by that point. So you usually, because you want the points, you build it a bit sooner than you would want in like your second city, maybe your third city, but it doesn't give you that much of a benefit. But still, it also gives happiness, so that's nice. And the savings are there, so I think it's actually better than the Great Lighthouse. It has like a similar benefits, but you can build it anywhere because it gives you gold, similar benefit. But you can build it anywhere. It doesn't restrict you to working your water tiles if you have to work some other improved tiles. So yeah, it's interesting, and it's a wonder. So just build it. Then we have the temple, and you know where temple is going. Temple comes from philosophy. If it comes from philosophy, put it in the F tier. It just like gives you some happiness. It like amplifies your holy sites mostly. And holy sites are good, don't get me wrong, but do you want to pay for that? It's probably gonna like make your culture overflow, so the culture is not really doing anything. And then you're getting the happiness, just build monuments. No need for temples. Then we have the warehouse. The warehouse is a bit similar to the scout. It's like if you build a warehouse, you're not doing great, but it's like a safety. Like turn 2, you want to make sure that you get your builds up, and you just build. It's like if you spawn very close to an opponent, and you can't be sure that your first settler will settle where you want it to, you might want to build a warehouse, because the biggest benefit of having 2 cities is that now you can build 2 things in your cities. And that's a big deal. It's way more than 1, means you can build a settler and something else. And a warehouse is a way to guarantee that with only 1 city. So in that sense, just like the scout, this is like a fail-safe, but whereas scout is like a priori or like a posteriori, you didn't draw your settler, so now I build a scout. Warehouse is like insurance, an a priori insurance. Like I might not be able to get the second city, so I have to build a warehouse to make sure I can get the second build. Because if you don't have 2 things to build on turn 3 because you don't have your second city, you're in deep trouble. Then we have the warrior, our last unit. Warrior is bad, and I don't even know how to make it better. It's just like it loses to everything because by the time you can try to defeat someone that is gonna have an axeman or a swordsman, it costs your build. You could be building settler. Why are you building a warrior? Like what are you doing? The problem with it is your first unit is going to be the furthest away you build from your enemy, probably, because it's in your capital. And then as you settle closer to your enemies, you might be building units. And by that point, you cannot be building warriors because they're out-teched. So when a warrior reaches someone, they're already out-teched. So just bad. Even if it costs like 1, you wouldn't build it. Yeah. If it was free, you would probably build it, but that's like we're talking about free stuff. Free stuff is always good. And these 2, as we decided, are not actually buildings, they're improvements in disguise. So this is the final tier list. Would I shift something around? Maybe one of these wonders, but I think I'm kind of, maybe you could, yeah, that's like, I think overall pyramids are the best here. Then let's get down there. Yeah, you gotta put the wonders on the top of their categories because they're wonders. They are wonderful. The units, probably like that. I think Horseman has a higher potential, but you have to actually see it in action. And then here, maybe I'm really down right now on the granary. Maybe it's a bit better, but yeah, overall I think this is what I like for the things you can build in a city. So we can move to things you build or you don't build, you use on the map, rather say. So, that's abilities, improvements, promotions. So these are the things you can do all the time if you have enough hammers. And first thing we have is attack strength, which is one of those promotions that I am recklessly burning, even though it's actually very good. Like, this is the tiebreaker, if you wanna be conquering someone, you put it on a swordsman, and now it will defeat their swordsman, even though they're in the city. I think that's how it works. And even then you can just juice it up with something else to really win that war. So as such, it's probably one of the things you can actually use as a promotion. Because overall promotions are not that great. So if you're not using your promotion slot, you're kind of like losing some value. Just put attack strength there. You're going to be happy. About barracks, we already said. Barracks are pretty good. Let's have them in the A tier. Probably put them above attack strength, just because that's how I like to play. Then we have the Berserker. The Berserker... Honestly, Berserker is mostly good because of the AI. Because AI sometimes have like 2 units in their city and you want to be able to conquer it. So you put a Berserker on your unit. So for that, I think it's a C tier. But once we get matchmaking where it's going to be just human players, I think Berserker will just not be that great. Yeah, I mean, Berserker works if you have like an overwhelming advantage over your opponent to conquer their probably city, because that's where you can see units bunched up, but that's just not gonna be happening in a real PvP. Then we have bread and circuses. Bread and circuses. I can see. Honestly, it's a bit like great work for France. You just like you have to actually take up to it, which is a blessing and a curse. The curse is the fact that it comes from philosophy. Well, actually, it comes from hereditary rule. It's our first big thing coming from civics. And the way civics works is that the first civic is fine for the ones that are like opposite to each other. So you have hereditary rule versus God King, and then you have agrarian society against hunter-gatherer, and then you have military dictatorship and hereditary rule, God King as well. So you have 3 government civics, and then 2 agricultural civics. So the problem for bread and circuses is hereditary rule is the worst one, because it has bread and circuses and royal guard, and bread and circuses is the better one, and it's still not that great. You just get some food on that specific. If it gave you like food overall, obviously it would be very nice. That would be a good one. And the happiness is basically, this is what you want to do if you conquer like the enemy's capital. You can use bread and circuses on it, and now it's not gonna like drain your economy that much. But it's like a very, very edge case. I don't even know. Maybe probably more like an F tier actually, now that I think about it. Let's put it in F tier for now. to have a bigger contrast with charge, which is like straight up S tier. Charge is just like amazing. This is the way you can actually conquer something, is with charge. When your opponent underestimates you, you can sneak up in their city, or just straight up allows you to attack someone without having to wait another turn. This basically buys you time, and as I said, Hexarchy is a race, so buying time is very important. Charge is also the reason why horses are very good, because on its own it's pretty expensive. I think the price is very well balanced. You want to make sure that you have horses, so you only pay a horse for it. But yeah, maybe I should have explained. The way charge works is when you end your turn next to an enemy unit, it will attack them. I think it can trigger twice in a row, so you can make like a nice chain. It prioritizes cities, so yeah, it's a way to conquer someone, especially if they don't expect it. If you can like outmaneuver them, come from a tile that they are not likely to stand on, you can charge into them. It's best used if you can actually attack into a tile that's next to a city, because attacks go before moves. So you attack a tile and then you get into the city, and unless the enemy predicts this, which honestly they should, but sometimes they don't, and they should attack the tile that you're trying to move into to get a draw there, and they're gonna have a problem. Yeah, just amazing. This is like the reason you sometimes have to rush the tech for it, which comes from writing. It's military tactics. This is like the best thing for military tactics, and is the reason that the tech is pretty good. Then we have conscription, which makes a random unit in your hand cost gold instead of what it normally costs. As I said, right now it's bugged, so if you use it with barracks, you can keep rotating that unit and still only pay 1 gold, which is just amazing. But even on its own, if you don't have like the iron for swordsman, or especially of course with the more expensive unit is, the better conscription gets. So with knights, with musketmen, this can really save you a lot of money. The only problem with conscription is that it comes from military dictatorship. So the government civic, so it competes with like the God King ones, which are pretty good. But honestly, this is like the reason to do military dictatorship. So yeah, they're pretty nice. Then we have, I don't remember the name of it. This is the one that improves your winery, I think. I guess it's called Cultivate. It can improve the yield of a winery or a farm by 1. Costs 1, gives you 1 improvement, but bit of a meager value. It's not like super bad, but because it comes from agricultural society, it means it competes with forage. It's just like overall not the greatest. Then we have Divine Decree, which you can use in your capital to give it 1 gold yield and 1 happiness. And that's pretty good. You can stack them up, so by the end of the game you might have like 4 of them on your capital, which is now then a good yield. It means you don't have to care about happiness that much in your probably the largest city, so then that's also good. It's not like a thing. Sometimes actually it is a thing you might have to build on turn 1. But then you're not very happy about it. But it's just like a nice incremental value you can be getting. And last thing to mention about it is that it comes from God King. So, it's competing against stuff like conscription or Baron Circuses. And, if you compare this to Baron Circuses, which is even like higher tier, it just Divine Decree is better. And then we have the other divine thing that you get from God King, Divine Favor. And similarly, it's pretty good. It means that your unit doesn't take money for maintenance, so that can save you quite a lot of gold over the whole game. And it gives them +3 power, so the weaker the unit, the bigger the impact this one has. It means your swordsman can beat their swordsman on the field. Then if you use it with attack strength, now you might be conquering cities. And yeah, these two are just good, which is the reason why God King is good, and that indirectly makes the other civics worse. So that's why Brand Synthesis is just not great, and Conscription is not as good as it could be because it's competing with these two. Although at some point their value might not be that great, and that's where you switch to Conscription. So at some point we may supplant it because this gives a more long-term benefit. Then we have our first improvement, and it's probably the worst one, which is the farm. And the reason the farm is not that great, but it's not like complete trash, is that it doesn't give you the benefit immediately. What I mean by that, if you use most of the other ones, like the fishing hut, or the lumber mill, or the mine, or the pasture, if you put them on a luxury resource, they will immediately harvest it. So you spend 3 hammers on a fishing hut, but you might get like 4 gold back because now you're harvesting 2 food or 2 luxuries. The farm doesn't do that. The farm only gives you the benefit over the end turn by increasing your tile production, and that's just very, very slow. Plus it gives you food. It only gives you actually 1 tradable food. This is like the only thing that only gives you 1 of the thing. It's because it was deemed a bit too strong in some previous metas, and I think right now it's just like not great. You can build it in like most places, so it can be nice, but getting population means again you have to care about unhappiness. It just doesn't do what you want it to do. As compared to the fishing hut, which is very nice. I don't think it's S tier. I think there are some like better ones, but it's definitely like an A tier improvement. It can only give you 2 luxury resources, which is food, or I'm saying luxury resources. I mean I guess strategic resources. I don't know how to call that. Like just the thing that you can see on the map and you can harvest them. So this can give you food or luxuries, depending on if you put them on crabs or whales. So it doesn't give you like the highest value ones, but it gives you the one that have like a fixed value at 2 gold. And yeah, the fact that you immediately harvest it is nice. That's why you don't necessarily have to rush forage that hard, because you can just use a fishing hut to harvest the tile, and it only costs you like 1 less hammer if you haven't gone through hunter-gatherer yet. But you have to be on a coast. That's like the one downside for it, and the fact that it doesn't give you anything better than 2 gold, 4 gold per turn if you don't have that much of it. Next up we have forage. I think forage is still great. I don't think it's as good as charge, although it's very good at feeding charge. Foraging horses is the play oftentimes. The reason I think it's S tier still is because every time you see it, you will probably use it, and it will give you money. You put it on whatever. You put it on pigs. Now you can sell it for 4 gold, plus you get some food extra. So every time you see forage, you want to be using it. Then of course you can use it on stuff like horses or iron when you need it, and that's gonna feel really great. It's the reason why hunter-gatherers are great and agricultural society is not that great, because you get access to forage, and forage is amazing. Then we have the fort. We already talked about the fort. Now it actually makes sense. That's an improvement that it puts on the map. If you build the fort in your city, then it wouldn't be that great. Next up we have garrison. If you put garrison on a unit, it gives happiness to the city that's in, and it lowers the city maintenance a little bit. That's just not enough value for it to be that great. It comes from military dictatorship, so it's competing with Divine Decree and Divine Favor. It's teaming up with Conscription against them, and it's definitely dragging the military dictatorship down. This is just, the value is not there, plus it takes your promotion slot, which you usually don't have that many of them. So you put it on this, and come on. You don't want to be doing that. Then we have the one that heals you up, Healing Ritual. That's from Paganism, just like Berserker. I guess at some point they will be opposite to something, but right now it's a civic that doesn't actually collide with anything, so you can keep them the whole game. And it's actually probably better than Berserker. Sometimes you can get a lot of value from it by putting on like a badly damaged unit, especially if you're defending and they cannot kill it in one hit. Healing Ritual can be very nice. The one thing that it doesn't do, you might expect it to do, is to heal with the buffs. So for example, if you have Divine Favor, your swordsman has 18 power, they take it down to like 10, you will heal up back to 18. You'll only heal up back to 15. I think that's a bit of a bug, but what can you do? Then we have the Lumber Mill. Lumber Mill has been buffed. Now it gives you firewood when you build it. And that's the reason I think it's a solid B tier. Basically the way it works, you put it on a tree, and now the tree tile gives you 2 more hammers, plus you immediately get a firewood back. So in that way, Lumber Mill only costs 1 hammer actually. And at that point, you pay 1 hammer to get 2 hammers extra for the rest of the game probably. And that's a good deal. The issue with it is forest tiles are not always like the best tiles to use, because you might have improvements on some other tiles and you might not have enough population to work the forest tile. But still, I think it's the fact that it costs only 2 and it gives you 1 back immediately makes it a solid investment in most cases. Then we have maneuvers. Maneuvers allows you to ignore the zone of control of enemy units, which has some potential, but I have personally never seen anyone use it, and I haven't used it either, so I have to put it in F tier. Just because of that, I think we need to play way more to see the. I mean, if I can imagine like a super high level, this can be very nice, but I just have never seen it, which means you just burn it and don't have to be the one to figure it out all. Just enjoy yourself. And then we have the mine, which is our first S tier improvement. Mine is amazing. This is oftentimes the thing you want to build on turn 1 along with your settler. You build your mine, then you can sell whatever you gather from the mine to buy your settler. Because it can be luxuries, it can be hammer, it can be it can be iron, stone, or marble. Marble is like meh, but if you build the mine on turn 1, that means on turn 2 you can already build a wonder, because the mine will immediately get you 1 stone and then it will give you another stone. So that's just great. One thing I have mentioned about these improvements is that fact that they give you the strategic resource they build on, even if you don't work the tile. So maybe you can build a mine on like a desert to get some luxuries from there. You don't have to work the desert tile to get those luxuries. It will be just like a passive trickle, which is another reason why. Oh, actually, that's the same way the farm works. The same way, it also gives you the 1 tradable food per turn, but it only gives you 1. This one will probably give you 2. And yeah, having a source of iron is just so important. So mine on iron is great. Mine on stone is also great for the wonders. It's just like, yeah, very, very good. And there are some tiles which have 2 resources, like luxury and a stone. That's just like amazing. But yeah, at some point you might be burning it. It's an S tier card, but it's like an early game S tier card. You don't really need more like than like 2 or 3 mines probably in like a regular game. But if you have a good spot to build it, just keep building them. Then we have mobilize and charge, the 2 buddies. I mean, mobilize has to be an S tier as well. Again, it gives you time. It's not as like impactful as charge, because charge can get you a city. Mobilize can only get you next to the city. But if you combine them together, you have 2 horses. You can build a unit, mobilize it, move to next to enemy city, charge into it. That's all in 1 turn. It's all very powerful. It's all what the combat is about. Yeah, I mean, you can also mobilize settlers to spread out faster in the late game. That can be very useful. And the only reason you would ever burn it is when you just somehow only making knights, and then you don't need it, of course. But yeah, It's just, yeah, great stuff. Then we have the monument, which gives you a culture and a happiness in all the cities, 2 tiles from it. So there are layouts of your cities where this can give you like 4 happiness and 4 culture per turn, just for 1 marble. Compare that to like the temple we talked about in the buildings. Monument is very good. I would say it's probably like somewhere here. Maybe barracks is. Let's order it a little bit. Maybe like this. Like this. It spawned its own like strategy where you can play like super densely packed cities. You settle just 2 tiles away and you spam monuments everywhere and you win by "We All Love You." I haven't seen a strategy in a while, but I think it's still playable. And overall, the fact that you can just buy it for marble, which honestly marble doesn't have many other uses. So this is like a good marble sink if you don't want to be selling it because it doesn't cost anything because nobody's buying it. The monument is a good way to do that. Then we have double time, which doubles the movement of the unit you put it on. Sounds good in theory. In practice, I don't see myself using it that much. So I think it has potential, but in the later stage of the game where you actually have the horses, the fact that it only costs the horses is like a big downside. Because mobilize you can pay with the hammers, you cannot pay hammers for double time. And that's a problem. And yeah, the later the game goes, the less important movement is because the cities are a bit closer to each other. And then barracks play into role to shortening that as well. So having super long movement is not that important. But the first time you do it, it can really caught someone by surprise. So don't underestimate it, but not that important. Then we have pasture. Pasture is just like, it's basically like the mine. Maybe a bit worse because mine can have a wider range of things. But maybe it's actually better than the mine because a pasture tile is usually better to work than a mine tile. So if you think about that, yeah, if you build a pasture somewhere, you want to be working that tile. Pasture, you can get luxuries, you can get food, you can get horses. I have 2 S tier abilities here that cost horses. That means pasture is very, very good. Not sure if it could be more important than either of these, but maybe they're better than the thing is forage is good all the time, but the first pasture is better than forage. So in that way they're both great, but still very important. Yeah, pastures. You needed a horse pasture at some point. It should be a priority when you settle your next cities. Find someone with horses because you will be using these a lot. Save a lot of money by having a pasture on a horse. Another improvement that can save you some money is the road. It lowers the maintenance cost, which can be quite substantial in some map layouts where there's a lot of hills and deserts. But sometimes you just don't have the time to build it because a very good road can cost 6 to 8 hammers. I think the one downside the road has, it either uses only stone or only hammers. The fact that you cannot pick I want to pay 2 hammers and 2 stone, or 4 hammers and 1 stone, makes it a bit worse than it could be. It's also very nice on defense and attack because it allows your, especially cavalry, to actually get where they need to. So it's a decent improvement, but it doesn't give you immediate benefit. So that's why the other improvements are just better, because they immediately give you stuff. Then we have the Royal Guard, which gives you +8 when you're within 3 tiles of your capital. And it comes from, which was that one? That's hereditary rule. So the same as Baron Circuses. I don't like it at all. I see some people use it, And it can be a bit annoying when it actually, because the reason I don't like it is it's good on defense. And I think if you want to be winning the games, you have to be on offense. And then you're not, it doesn't do anything because you're on the offense. But the bonus is very significant. Like if you have it on a swordsman in your city, it can be very powerful. There are some maps where you spawn like the coast and you have to expand on the coast. And then your capital is actually pretty close to your opponent because they're like blocking you from getting inland. In that case, Royal Guard can be quite nice, but that's like such a big exception, that just like not that great. Same with the shield wall. Shield wall, straight up the worst thing it can be doing. It comes from mathematics, so nothing further there. Range units are terrible, so why would you protect against them? Just say no to shield wall. Next up we have strength. I think strength is not bad, but it's the card you want to be burning in your first turn, so you can afford the good cards. So if by some miracle you don't need to burn it, it can be decent. It makes sure like your scout can beat up their scouts or their settlers. Your settlers can be killed, but that doesn't usually happen. So the boost is not that significant. Yeah, just burn it on your first turn and be done with it. Then we have Vanguard, which is basically the permanent charge, and that is very, very good. It's a bit expensive, because it comes from it's on the same tier as Knight, comes from feudalism, I'm pretty sure. So once you have Vanguard, you can probably burn your mobilize, because you can be doing Vanguards from time to time, although it's more expensive, doesn't get the horse. But you can just keep on pushing with your units, which is nice. Although now that I think about it, I use Vanguard a lot, but maybe I shouldn't be using it much, because after attacking, your unit might be a bit lower on health. So unless you can heal it with healing ritual, you won't actually be using the charge that much. So it's like a very good snowball card. But maybe overall not amazing. Maybe it's actually more like an B tier thing, So you have like an extra type of your mobilize, so it's a bit cheaper and easier to draw. But overall, it's mobilize, it's good, it's just a bit more expensive. Next up we have Winery, which is an improvement that's behind Agricultural Revolution. And that's the only downside of Winery. Like the first Winery you built is very, very good, because it gives you some luxuries, give you gold. You don't have to care about the food tile. There's gonna be other food tiles you can work. You can spare one for a Winery. It only costs 2, which is nice. So yeah, the only problem with it is it's from agriculture, so Agricultural Revolution. So it fights against forage. So the way you want to be playing it is you want to get to Agricultural Revolution first, build your first Winery, and then get your hunter-gatherers and get forage, and then you will automatically burn your Winery, because the first one will give you 2 luxuries, and again it's wine. There's no other way to get it, so the first Winery will always give you 2 wine over the end turn, and that's a good value. That's good value. It just, the only problem is it goes against forage, so sometimes you don't see it because you need forage early. But if you can postpone forage, you can use a fishing hut instead. So your forage goes into your discard pile, then you have time to build Winery, and then you crack your hunter-gatherers for forage, forget about Winery, and you're doing great. Speaking about something hunter-gatherer, there's Woodsman. Woodsman is just great on cavalry, or even melee units if there's a lot of hills between you and your opponents. So it can be, it's never bad. And yeah, it's one of those improvements you can just slap on a unit if you have an empty promotion slot there. it's gonna be better. It's better at like attacking into defensive positions as well. Just all around a solid one. And then again, the fact that it's with forage means it's probably gonna stay along for a while, so you can get some value from it. And the last improvement we have is the workshop. The workshop is decent. It's a bit high tier, right? It comes from I believe metalworking. No, maybe even after that, right? It's come from feudalism. Yeah, that's the reason it's not that great. It's because it's like very late game, and by that point you might not really need it. But it doesn't disappear like Winery because you don't have to burn anything for it. And the value it gives, hammers gold. It's pretty good. It's just like it's an economic improvement for the which comes in the late game. So overall, it doesn't like do that much as you would like it to do. So that's all for the map things. I think the fact that it's different stuff altogether really makes it harder for me to order them inside the tiers, but I think this looks good. So we can move on to the last thing, which is the technologies and the civics. So these are cards that don't do anything by themselves, but they give you access to other cards. Starting with agricultural revolution. Basically what I said about winery applies here. If you can get it before hunter-gatherer, which it is supposed to, good, go for it, build your winery, and then just burn it and be done with it. If you already have hunter-gatherer, you might want to burn it immediately, but if you can get the first winery, it can be very nice. Then we have agriculture, which is one of the best cards in the game, turn 1, get a settler and get a pasture. That's a great start. So it also leads to other very important things, horseback riding. So yeah, good stuff. You might sometimes want to just buy it with hammers. You don't have to build it always with the science. If you have to do like two in the same turn, you don't have enough burns to get 2 sciences, go for it, because the fact that the pasture can give you resources to do something else is just invaluable. Then we have construction. Construction is like a solidly mid-tier technology because, construction itself doesn't really give you that much, but it allows you to get Notre Dame at the next level because construction alongside metalworking gives you engineering. Engineering is the good stuff. Construction itself, there's Great Wall, but again, you just want to be doing Notre Dame. So sometimes you have to rush through it because you have to go like construction, engineering in the same turn. And in that case, it's kind of important. Sometimes if somebody already built the wonders, they built Notre Dame, they built Great Wall, you can burn it. There's musketman is good, but it's not that important if you don't have to do it. And yeah, they're basically the same for engineering. Engineering is the reason you want to go construction. So it's again a tier higher. So if you get to engineering and they just build Notre Dame that turn, you feel a bit sad, but at least you're a bit closer to the actually getting to musketman. So you probably want to burn construction more often than you want to be burning engineering. Then we have feudalism, which can give you knights and vanguards and workshops. And yeah, knights are nice. So if you can get your hand on a knight because of this, that's good stuff. But knights are not that impressive, and they don't give you points. So probably overall, engineering is more important than feudalism here. As in, you can burn feudalism if you just plan to stay on swordsman the whole game. Yeah, just burn feudalism. If you plan to get to musketman, you might burn feudalism as well. These are actually very much in a position. These are like the 2 paths you can go further down the tree, and you can really do both at once. So you have to stick to one. Then we have fishing. Fishing, of course, gives you fishing hut and foraging. That's the most important thing in there. And that's also why it's below agriculture. On turn 1, fishing hut is just not as good as turn 1 pasture usually, or turn 1 mine. And it's also like cut off, nothing, there's no other technology coming from fishing, so it doesn't open you the tech tree as much as agriculture. Then we have another civic. We have the God King. God King is pretty solid because it gives you divine favor and divine decree. It's both very cheap thing. This also only costs 1. It's like the best government civic, but overall it's not important. Sometimes you can burn it if you need the hammer immediately. It's like very many incremental advantages it gives you, but sometimes you just want to front load the benefit and get the hammer immediately. Then we have gunpowder. Gunpowder gives you musketman. That's nice, but it's very late game technology. Sometimes you'll not even get to it. So, and it's, I guess you could like try to rush it, but it is very expensive to rush that. But the benefits are there, It's just something I don't have that much experience with. Maybe I should try it more, rushing gunpowder and getting some musketmen to conquer. But usually swordsman with some promotions will suit you as well, and it's way cheaper. Then we have hereditary rule. That's when I talked about the abilities that come from it. It comes from philosophy, and it's not itself very good. It's one of the reasons why philosophy is bad. There's nothing there, and the fact that it overrules God King, yuck, get out of here. Then we have horseback riding. Horseback riding gives you access to mobilize. That's very nice, and it also leads to feudalism. It also gives you horsemen. It's one of those techs that you will often pay hammers for because you don't have the 2 science in 1 turn for it, and you'll be happy with it because you saved up the horse and you can mobilize, and it's gonna pay you off. Then we have hunter-gatherer, which means forage, and woodsman to a lesser degree. It's the reason why agricultural revolution not that great. I keep calling it agricultural revolution. I think it's actually called agricultural society. So yeah, hunter-gatherer, forage is just like very good, very cheap, very good. But if you can do the fishing hut first, as I said. Then we have masonry. Masonry, I think. Masonry or agriculture. What do you want to have more on turn 1? Turn 1, actually, maybe the fact that you can build masonry on stone and immediately on turn 2 get a wonder, plus you have your settler going somewhere, so you kind of don't have anything else to do that's great on turn 2 usually, because you are unlikely to draw your settler again. I mean, if you can do that is very much a consideration, but being able to do a super cheap wonder on turn 2 is probably edging out agriculture a little bit. Also, the fact that masonry leads to stoneworking, metalworking, gives you swordsman, and mobilizing the swordsman is very good, but you have to have the swordsman in the first place. So I think that's why masonry ekes out agriculture. But I mean, they are both like absolutely core technologies. Technology that's not very core is mathematics. Like the only reason you would want to do mathematics is for Chichenica, because there's like nothing else there. You get what do you get? You get shield wall, right? Yeah, that's good. You also get catapult. Terrible. Yeah, this is just like, hey, do you need the points? Go for mathematics. Do you need points? Just burn it. Now we are finally up to metalworking, and yeah, I guess I use the same logic why masonry is better than agriculture. That's why metalworking is better than horseback riding. You need to have your swordsman first before you can mobilize it. And yeah, mobilizing the swordsman is the real winner here. Although, yeah, if you can get the jeweler down at some point, also very nice. Together with horseback riding, you get to feudalism. So that's where they both team up together. But it's all about the swordsman, you know. Again, you will pay 4 hammers and then you pay 1 iron for swordsman. You're doing very well. Military dictatorship basically just means conscription. Conscription is nice. It's not completely worthless. Like in the end game, conscription is probably better than the divine stuff you can get from God King. So at that point, you can supersede God King with military dictatorship. But it's in like a heavy military games when you have barracks and stuff. Never mind the bug. Then it's good. But if you don't plan to go that way, you can burn it. But it's not F tier. It has uses. Just like military tactics. Military tactics, maybe a bit better than horseback riding because charge is just like such an important thing that having access to it is, I mean, it's all about charge in case of military tactics. You can also get barracks there, but an attack strength. So those are like good things, but it's really about, just like with horseback riding or with metalworking, you pay 4 hammers for your military tactics and you use that charge and you're gonna profit. Then we have mysticism. Out of all the tier 1 techs, mysticism is like the one you can kind of get by without. You know, it leads to God King, and honestly, God King is the reason to go mysticism. There's also like a monument, and of course Temple of Diana. But all of these things are like mid tier. Like none of these things are like your first priority. So overall, mysticism is like very, You know, there are games where I burn mysticism on turn 1. You know, it can happen. It's not. You can win a game without having mysticism. It can be a bit harder, but if you really need to get that boost on turn 1 to do what you need, you might be willing to burn it. But if you keep it, then gradually it has like a lot of incremental value. That's how I would describe it. Like paganism, but paganism, honestly, the best thing of paganism is the fact that it doesn't compete with any other civic, so you can just get it. You can get your berserker or your healing ritual, mostly your healing ritual, let's be honest. I have probably undervalued healing ritual a bit in the last section. But yeah, it's like a very low impact. You can burn it and it's probably gonna be fine. But because there's no other civic compared to it, it's like living there. It doesn't have to beat God King, for example. Finally, arrived at philosophy. I've been trash talking it the whole time. Philosophy the whole time, and now you should know why. You know, it gets the hereditary rule, it gives you courthouse, it gives you temple. None of those things are very good. Altogether, you have like 4 bad things packed into 1 card. This is like the easiest burn in the history. Just like philosophy, get out of here. Then we have woodworking. Woodworking is very, probably even worse. Yeah, I mean, for sure. It's worse than mysticism on turn 1. Like, what do you want to build from there? Like, maybe lumber mill if there's like literally nothing else. Warehouse, as I said, turn 2 safety, decent. Granary, not great. Archer is terrible. So the only like real reason to go woodworking is for construction. So it's probably gotta be worse than construction then, because this is the reason you go this way. Otherwise, because you want to go to engineering. These are like 3 very like, oh, I want engineering. I have to go through construction. I have to go through woodworking. Just because Notre Dame is that good. Other than that, woodworking just like a very, very uninspiring technology. Again, there are games where I just burn it. And last one we have writing. Writing is like in a weird spot where it's worse than mysticism on turn 1. It's probably even worse than, still worse than woodworking on like turn 2. But from then on, because it leads to military tactics, it's better than either of those. So it's like you need it to get to military tactics. But on its own, it's like you never want to do it that early. You know, ideally you would want to go writing, tactics, charge. That's how you want to go for it, because you don't want to crack writing and then now you have library in your deck, and mathematics, you don't really want to be doing that. So even though it's like a prerequisite for military tactics, just because it's so not great in the early game, it's like you always want to be like, oh, I wish I could burn it. But if you burn it, then you will never have charge, and there's no other way to get charge. So you got to keep it around, even though until like turn 4 or 5 when it actually starts doing something. So yeah, that was every single card in Hexarchy. I hope you enjoyed my analysis. I want to hear your opinions as well, so write them in the comments or on Discord. I will leave a link down below to these tier lists so you can make them yourself. So maybe you can have a little chat about them. And yeah, see you next time. Bye bye.